Hey everybody, welcome to Squatch Talk. God, I forgot my intro. I'm Pat. Oh, wait, I wasn't supposed to say that. I was supposed to say, let's do this.
Back to nature, climbing higher. Woods are thick, hiking alone. Hear a tree crack, loud as gunfire. Stops you cold, chill to the bone. Hear the growling, turn to howling. Something's prowling just out of sight. Beast in the night. Beast in the night. The forest has fallen silent. The mountain's dark. The moon is full. Catch the black shape of a giant, 8 feet tall, unbelievable. Your heart is pounding, huge steps are bounding. Your hope is drowning in the fading light. Beast in the night. Beast in the night. Oh, hell yeah. Run for your life. Step it up. Your fear is growing. Red eyes are glowing. You might die knowing those folk were right. Beast in the night. Beast in the night. Beast in the
And hey everybody, welcome to Squatch Talk. I'm Pat. How's everybody doing tonight? Thanks for being here. I appreciate each and every single one of you. And I can't believe I forgot my own intro. It's been that long. It has been that long since I've done a live show, but here I am. And I got something to say. And I figured, why not just go live, cut it live? I was just going to content it, just do pre-recorded content, maybe even edit it some, all fancy and stuff. But I said, nah, just haven't been live in a while. It's good timing with this holiday weekend, so just go live and cut it in one take, bud, like you do. And so here I am. Um, so thanks for being here. If you're catching this live, again, I'm recording content by hitting the live button. So um, the the time travelers from the future. Hello, future people. I'm from the past. Time travelers from the future. Vast majority of people that will see this. Um, so yeah, I hope everybody's doing well. And again, live viewers, thank you for being here. I appreciate you all. Um, but I will just kind of get into it. So I've kind of realized a lot of things in a relatively short amount of time recently, and that's I want to get that off my chest and put it out there into the Bigfoot sphere, if you will. Um, and it's just going to make a lot of people pull their hair out, and maybe you want to argue with me and debate me, and I actually welcome that. Uh, Totally fine with me. I feel like I've made some realizations about the reality when it comes to the Bigfoot thing, uh, that I could pretty much back up with some facts. So even if it's my opinion, I'd say it's fact based. I have facts to fall back on. So that's kind of where I'm at. And this has sort of been this is always what I've done. I've always been the skeptical, critical thinker sort of name tag guy in the Bigfoot world. And some people have misinterpreted that like real heavy one way or not respected it enough in the other. And that's fine. But um, what I want to talk about tonight is some contradictions that cannot be ignored. And so let's start. Let's start here. Let's start. I've been here. I've had this presence on YouTube for 7 years now. Um, but lately, with within the past year, there's been a exponential increase. I'll say, which is weird because it seems like there was some lag time with it, but exponential increase in Bigfoot shows out there and Bigfoot guests. Um, and it doesn't. I guess it doesn't take much for the show population to increase, and then that makes the whole guest. Now you're hearing people you've never heard from before, you've never heard of. So that's why it's so exponential. The show increase has happened. So it's obvious to me that people finally figured out just how easy uh, uh eh, StreamYard is to use. Uh and everybody finally had enough technology built up, I guess, over the past couple of years to facilitate that, because like StreamYard doesn't work on older phones, especially older iPhones, oddly enough. But um it's so easy to you can create a YouTube channel, My Bigfoot Show, and then go to StreamYard, create a StreamYard account for free, and within 30 minutes you could be publishing your very first My Bigfoot Show episode. You know, uh, uh, you could uh, you could do that pretty easily and fast, and so people have figured that out. And to be a guest, just as easy. Link, here you go, boom, you're on the show, you're talking. And so the shows have exploded, and so with that, I've kind of been gobbling them up a little bit, like whatever recommendations I get or what I see on Facebook, if it's something I've never seen before, I'll check it out and go ahead and subscribe and at least like breeze through some people's episodes, if not watch them entirely. They're usually all right around that hour mark. Like, got to keep things at an hour. Um, and so I built up a pretty big subscription base on my Squatch Talk channel, things that I subscribe to really like absorb a lot of content and narrative and what people are saying, and most of what's going on there are people telling their experiences as some sort of researcher or investigator. Maybe they had a Bigfoot encounter when they were younger, uh, and have since had five more, or in some cases 80 more. It's all over the map, right? um, it's real easy to spot. It's easy to hear this narrative of all these different people from different parts of the country talking about, you know, when they go out in the woods this time or that time. Maybe it's a hot spot, maybe it's a habituation. And they're going out there and they're having Bigfoot experiences. And so I've just noticed an explosion in that narrative online, you know, big time. And then you throw in some of the bigger podcasts in there, and some of what's starting to come out of those places. Um, it would, you know, it's kind of getting a little more outlandish, first of all. But even if it's not, even take the outlandish like increase out of it, it's still narrative, narrative, narrative. We go here, things happen. We go there, things happen. We hear Bigfoot. They come around camp. We find tracks. We find stick structures. The same old narrative. Um, so I'm like, okay, there's just there's way too much of this going on, and again, from all parts of the country. And if you haven't seen my barred owl video, check it out because this sort of plays into this. I'm like, God, these Bigfooters, they can just Bigfoot on demand, which is very odd to me. And there's a lot of this narrative. It's become the narrative. It's rock solid. Go randomly check any Bigfoot channel where people are talking about their experiences. Not so much like anonymous encounters, but where people are talking about their experiences. It's all over the place now. It's not hard to find. Just look at your suggestion box, hit your homepage on your Bigfoot stuff. You'll see these channels in there. You just go check them out, and this narrative is clearly just there. Um, so that got me thinking, because this doesn't seem right. Something about this doesn't sit right with me. And it's clearly become a, you know, Bigfoot is everywhere, always, whenever you want them kind of situation. Again, we go to the hot spot, we do this, we do that, we have activity. We hear vocalizations. it's just so much of that being talked about, and I'm like, "Wait a second, I thought they were elusive and rare." Like, I thought that was the narrative, like, elusive and rare, right? That because that explains so much about why we can't get evidence. Whenever the evidence word comes up, elusive and rare. But I mean, we go here and they come around the camp and they interact with us and they wait, wait, hold on. I thought they were elusive and rare. This is not the behavior of an elusive and rare creature. And there's your supreme contradiction. One of these things is not like the other. This is a true contradiction that cannot be logically overcome. So one of them is definitely not true. It could be both aren't true. Say Bigfoot isn't really a thing. It doesn't exist at all. Whatever. It's just all made up. Then both of them aren't true. But it's 100% that one of them isn't true. So which is it? Now I'll say this to that. Which is it? If there is an undiscovered hominin running around North America, it would absolutely have to be elusive and rare. And I base that opinion, like, I can dip my toe into science as far as that goes. So we can have a scientific, real, reality, science-driven discussion about it would have to be. In 2023, with 6 billion modern humans on the planet, an undiscovered hominin, bipedal, you know, that's on the, some kind of scale of, like, discovering that Neanderthal are still with us, or Denisovans are still with us on this planet. It absolutely would have to be rare and elusive. So I could back that up with science for a flesh and blood undiscovered hominin. Would have to be rare and elusive. But this over here, the narrative, well, we go out to our favorite Bigfoot hotspot and we hear whoops, but they're elusive. I and so these people that say all that stuff, they will go along with the rare and elusive thing because that always explains why they can't get the evidence. Why there's no evidence. That's the excuse. Well, they're rare and elusive. Well, that's a contradiction. So you're having Bigfoot activity. It's Bigfoot out there. They're whooping, they're banging on trees. They come around camp. Maybe you see a shadowy figure. That's not elusive behavior. An elusive creature would pay you no mind and understand that you don't know they're there and get get as far away from you as they could. That's what an elusive creature would do. And then there's the rare part, which is like, so that's deep in science. Like, they would have to be rare. So there's 6 billion of us on the planet. There's not a billion of them. There's not, you know, 10 million of them even in North America for sure. That's you know 10 million. That's about the size, it's what is that? Like about the size of what Los Angeles, like population of Los Angeles, I think is about 10 million. Um, so 100% they have to be rare. That's based in like simple reality. Um, and elusive, again, I think there's good scientific reality that you could fall back on to say, well, they would have to be, you know. Um, so low numbers and the propensity to stay the hell away from us does not match up with. I went out last weekend and heard whoops, and I've had 10 encounters, and there's thousands of people saying this stuff, and tens of thousands or 10,000 people have seen them, you know. And like from Florida to Maine to Washington State to Texas and the Kiamichis, parts of Arkansas, Michigan, Mississippi, Alabama, North Georgia. I don't know, man. How elusive and rare is that? I say it's not very, not very at all. Not it's not elusive and rare. It just doesn't meet that definition. So again, one of these things can't be true. And so that makes you wonder what the hell's going on. Um, no evidence. So everything that you hear online comes from people that are telling stories and driving narratives. And if you pay attention, they drive that narrative sometimes in a very clever way where they were literally say out of their mouth, I'm not saying it was Bigfoot, dot, dot, dot. Next sentence, they basically do. They do say it's Bigfoot. Contradiction. Because they're able to rule out this and rule out that and rule out this, and therefore it must be. Now that's a logical fallacy on its own. But to say, I'm not saying it's Bigfoot, dot, dot, dot. Next sentence, they say it's Bigfoot because they ruled these things out. So a little clever way around it. That happens all the time. Like every day. Almost every show I see, somebody is using that sort of little clever trick to you know, to cover their butt. Say, well, I didn't say it was Bigfoot, even though they did. Again, the contradiction. And so these contradictions are everywhere. Unlike Bigfoot, they just simply can't be everywhere because the most logical thing that fits an undiscovered hominin in 2023 with modern day humans, the most sensible logical thing is they would have to be rare and elusive. They would have to play by those rules. But yet they're being seen all over the country and sometimes in places that just absolutely make no sense, which for me is that's just immediate dismissal and proves what's really going on. So if you can narrow down an area where people say they're seeing them or they're experiencing activity, you look at that geographically and go, there is no way undiscovered hominin could be running around right there. You know, like so if if 100 people said they saw him in Central Park, that's an automatic dismissal, right? Like, no, not for a flesh and blood creature, right? Now we're talking the woo stuff, and I'll get to the woo, just not now. Um, so these are huge contradictions, man. That I don't think could be ignored. But who am I, dude? I'm just little old Pat in the Bigfoot world. Uh, you know, like I don't have a huge voice, and I don't influence people because I don't do all the sexy stuff, and I don't placate fucking people. I tell it like it is. You know why? Because the truth matters. At the end of the day, that's it. The truth matters. And most people will agree to that. But when you try and rip away their cherished belief, then all of a sudden, maybe it doesn't matter anymore. Maybe I'd rather hold on to my wubba, my juvenile Bigfoot wubba, you know, and that's kind of the problem. But I have noticed a change, oddly enough. Um, I've seen a different narrative change. I've seen some of the hey guys, hey guys, we need to get our shit together narrative. I've seen more of that lately, and in places I didn't expect. So that's been refreshing, and that's all great and stuff. But um, and maybe I can talk to some of those people about this more deep. Uh, because where's the evidence? Um, again, that's part of the great contradiction is if you talk to anybody who has some kind of narrative where they're talking about hotspot, place they go, things that happen, you know, and especially if it's like a multiple thing, or habituation on a private property. So private land's different uh, than public land. Obviously, you're not. Some public doesn't have access to, and I'll get to that. There's another like point to make there, but habituation or hotspot narratives, and they never come out of that with evidence. All The only thing that ever gets reported back is their story, their interpretation of the events that happened around them. That's it. No evidence, even if they find a track, take a picture of it. That's not evidence. It's not scientific evidence at all. Um, you know, if they were to find some hair, well, that ain't evidence until it gets vetted through the proper professionals. And I say the same damn thing about the track. Problem with the track is all you have is this picture, maybe a cast, you know. But again, at best, that's trace evidence. And so nobody ever comes out there with real evidence, which, like, it's our starting point, just our starting point on that. Some kind of long form filmed observation and filmed well. So not 30 seconds or, a blob squatch picture. None of that, dude. I'm talking something that would be truly compelling. You could start considering that evidence, I believe. And then of course everything of the scale has to be real evidence, you know. And unfortunately that becomes a very short list. I don't know. You know, I don't know how you actually collect DNA that could, turn out to be real evidence, but even good pictures, pictures are just never going to work. It has to be movement. So filmed video or film of some kind. Hold on 2 seconds, guys. Sorry, I apologize. I've been a little under the weather, so like sometimes I cough, uh, which is why I've got my cough syrup right here. I did not want to do that into your eyes and ears. So I mean, the reality is that you have all this narrative of all these places and all these people that have multiple experiences or encounters, um, all over the place in high numbers for an elusive and rare creature, evidently. And they never come away with evidence. And so if you pin them down and say, well, why don't you ever get evidence? I mean, we're a pretty capable species, right? We've got good technology, and these guys always claim to have like technology with them, their night vision or their audio recorders, their GoPros attached to them, like whatever. I'm like, I mean, if it's right there throwing rocks at you, like go get it. Like, you know, we have some pretty amazing handheld lights that I don't think they would dig. Um, fire a couple of warning shots into the ground, like why aren't you like being more aggressive? Like those are the questions I ask to say, why aren't you getting on top of them to get evidence? Like especially when you're surrounded by other humans. I guess it's different if you're by yourself. I get that. You don't maybe no, don't want to take the aggressive approach, but there's always some excuse, and it's always some mysterious. It always goes back to the elusivity, and they're powerful. They're super intelligent. Again, things that like you can't really have knowledge about. I suppose their size indicates power. I get that, but you know there's no way to know how smart they are. We're not giving Bigfoot IQ tests, right? Um, that's not a thing. So, I mean, again, it always falls back in sort of this mystical, like even the flesh and blood people, like they're real guilty of like magical thinking and projecting themselves and projecting other primates like onto Bigfoot. And at the end of the day, you don't know any of that because they're not actually studied. And these researchers, you're not studying Bigfoot. You're not learning anything about Bigfoot. There's nobody in this world that I know of that has any more proof of Bigfoot or knowledge of a Bigfoot than me. Nobody. Not Meldrum, not Todd Standing, not Cliff Barackman. None of those people have any more proof or understanding than I do. None of them. And I'll challenge each and every one. I'll challenge them as a panel to debate me on that. And we 4v1. Bring it, you know, because that's the reality. Again, the truth matters. It should matter, you know? Huh, that was weird. Um, the truth matters. And the truth is that this contradiction should not be ignored. You know, that they are uh, elusive and rare, yet the online Bigfoot narrative is they're everywhere all the time. Easy to get to, easy to provoke into a Bigfoot experience. Um, which me and Jeff talked about last week. So this conversation's already been had on Jeff Harding's show, Pine Island Research. Guess I'll go if I remember to. Jeff, remind me. Uh, or somebody remind me. Uh, yeah, I'll go. In the description, and I'll link to it. Uh, but if I forget to do that, it's pretty simple. It's Pine Island Research YouTube channel, and it was the last show about a week ago that Jeff put out, and I was on there, and we talked about this, um, which is an interesting sort of point, and so I'll keep it in my neighborhood. Oh, there's Jeff. What's up, bud? I might bring you in, bro. Uh, if you're interested, I'll keep it in my own neighborhood, which is in here in North Georgia, and just one Facebook group that I'm a part of. And I mean, North Georgia mountains are they're a decent size area. There's some decent, relatively remote areas, but a lot of them are uh, accessible through state maintained fire roads, and this is where people go to primitive camp. But just one Facebook group I'm a part of, North Georgia Hiking and Adventure is the name of the group. It's almost 200,000 people. And I put out the analytics for that group. It was like off the charts, man. It's a very active group. Uh, there's thousands of people going into the North Georgia mountains every day, rain or shine. Might be a little less in the rain. The AT starts here. Appalachian Trail starts in North Georgia. And so all the people who are doing through hikes or quarter hikes or half hikes or as far as they can go hikes, they all start here any given night along the AT, which goes through the heart of the most remote part of North Georgia. There's probably 200 people on that trail right now as we speak in the state of Georgia. Probably 200, could be more. Um, and this is all year long, all year long. Now it does fluctuate. A lot of hikers like to start their through hike in early spring here. But anyway, almost 200,000 people in this one Facebook group. All the analytics are like off the charts. So there are thousands of people that go out into the North Georgia mountains every single day, not to mention the weekends. And so they're going to all these places that Bigfooters go. And so Bigfooters do come to North Georgia. It's an attraction for them. And I'm telling you, like I could just drive up to one of their spots if I wanted to. I know exactly where they're going. Like I know all the good out there deep spots. And there's only so many fire roads anyway. And that's where they're going. They're going down these fire roads. Some of them go 10 to 12 miles deep into the woods, away from the nearest convenience store. And so they're going to places like that. They're reporting Bigfoot activity. Bigfooters are, right? And so, here we are in this weekend, and the BFR, same thing. And I don't know how they get away with it. I don't know how they get away with charging people. I need to get to the bottom of that. charging people to be in uh, federal land on a state maintained road. Um, the should be illegal, but maybe you can get a permit for that. Honestly, I don't know. Anyway, BFRO, same thing. They love to come to North Georgia and put together expeditions where Bigfoot activity happens. Shocker. You get what you pay for, right? Um, what about all these thousands, potentially tens of thousands of people in between who are not Bigfooters? Not a word from them. They're not reporting the shit. The shit ain't happening to them. It's not. So why is that? You know, why is it that Bigfooters go out into the woods and they want to have a Bigfoot experience? They're thinking about having a Bigfoot experience. They're anticipating, hoping to have a Bigfoot experience, and they do. I heard whoops. Yeah, I mean, why? Why is that? Are they that special? What about the 1,000 people before them, the 10,000 people before them? They're going to the same areas. If you exclude private land, and there's not a lot of bigfooting on private land in North Georgia. I know that for sure. So they're going to the same places that way more percentage of people are going to than they frequent, the Bigfooters frequent. Just good, like, people that love to be out in the woods and love these areas like I do. I go to these places because they're amazing. They're great, wonderful places to camp and hang out, especially if you can get a group together. Like, you know, one of these things is not like the other. So where does that leave Bigfooters? Where does that leave them? The only thing they can say is that they're special. That these things happen to them because they're special in some way. Because they have the right mindset, because they know the proper calls to draw them in. That that's it. That's the only place they can go, is to self-proclaim speciality. And okay, so not only are you special enough to pick the right area that thousands of other people go to, you're also special enough to call them in and interact with them, or have the right mindset to magically draw them in and interact with you. That stuff's all over the board. Um, and so on and so forth. Like, how are you that special? Oh, but you're not special enough to get any fucking evidence. Where's the fucking evidence? Where is it? You're special, but you're not special enough to get evidence. Okay. Dog chasing its tail. Dog chasing its tail. Dog chasing its tail. Dog chasing its tail. That's what I see. Hey, Raptor. What's up, buddy? I hope you're doing well, man. I hope you're having a good holiday. You keep on making comments. You keep on asking questions, man. Your questions are allowed here. Sorry, guys. That was a little bit of an outburst right there. I don't often show that kind of emotion. uh, dealing with this stuff, but I guess I'm that frustrated, and it is. It's very frustrating for somebody like me that, has come into this whole thing wanting to know. It's just the way I say it. Wanting to know why people are seeing 8-foot tall monkey men in the woods. Like, that interested me, and I've spent a lot of time and energy here, trying to figure that out, only to figure out most of it's bullshit. Most of it's bullshit. The vast majority of online rhetoric in the Bigfoot topic is either, you know, outright hoaxers or liars, and I think there's a difference, but, well, I'm not gonna get into the semantics of that. Outright hoaxers, liars, people who are lying to themselves, or a complete misidentification, or a mix of those things. Like, there's 1,000 subcategories to, you know, those things I laid out. Like, there's 1,000 subcategories, you know? So some people just want attention. I've dealt with that. Some people might be mentally unstable. I've seen that. So, like, I've seen the mentally unstable get taken so seriously that they become a name, like a name. It's like very disturbing. But I mean, that's where I'm at, and I got there honestly because I have no dog in the hunt. I have I you know no strong bias of, well, I want Bigfoot to be explained by this, and that's it. I don't. I don't. If they come from Planet Hairtron, so be it. Truth, finally, understanding the fine people of Planet Hairtron have come to see us. You know, what did you do with Dennis Martin? Sorry, that was too soon. Um, I'm serious, guys. If they're in cohorts with the flying spaghetti monster, which I have a strong belief in, this flying spaghetti monster. Now that's something I believe in. True, truly believe in. I don't believe in Bigfoot, but if they're in cohorts, with the flying spaghetti monster, so be it. Truth. If everybody's hallucinating, so be it. Truth. You know, uh, I, I I've always just wanted to know, and I still do, because here's the thing: after everything I just said, I leave this much space for the phenomena is still a real, legit phenomena. Some people do actually have an encounter, you know, a face to face, clear as day, no mistaking what it is. That does happen. So I'm not saying that doesn't happen. There are people in this world that I believe that happened to. It's just that happening, that percentage is way smaller than the Bigfoot narrative. The narrative, the Bigfoot narrative is just wrong. It's absolutely wrong. But the truth of this phenomena being real and unexplained, very important point. That is true. That's not a narrative. I think that's as real as it gets. Um, unless they're all lying, which is still an explained phenomenon. Like, why the hell these people lie about all the same stuff? I'm not talking about fooling yourself. I'm not even talking about like outright hoaxing because a hoax is something different. It's trying to show something that is supposed to be Bigfoot. So I don't know. You know, the actual phenomena is still real. It's still there. It's a thing. And but for me, at the end of the day, it's just something I can't explain. Um, because I don't think it's wise. Even though I understand how people connect these dots, and I also understand how convoluted it gets real fast. It's a little bit irresponsible, and I'm not talking to the people who have actually seen them, like Jeff. Like, you know, Jeff saw something that he can only describe as a primate that was of this world, flesh and blood, and I get that. That's what he experienced. I mean, that was his observation, you know. And so all the people that actually see this phenomena happen in front of their eyes, they pretty much all describe the same thing, you know. And that is something that meets our definition of a primate. Um but I would not be so quick to connect that dot because things just get convoluted after that, unfortunately. People, if you say, "Zoop," well, they look like a primate, therefore they are. So they're a primate living on, planet Earth, and then you start attributing the people. Unfortunately, they start projecting primate behaviors on them and passing that off as knowledge. Well, Bigfoot does this because primates are blah 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 blah, and then even some human behaviors because we're primates too. Well, Bigfoots do this because people do blah 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 blah. And it just turns into a convoluted soup of nonsense real fast, unfortunately, because there's no knowledge. Sure, they look like a primate, but what if they come from planet Hairtron? Does that make them a primate? Primates are of this earth. So maybe the definition got flipped upside down. And I'm not going down some woo road. That's not what I'm doing. All I'm saying is the phenomena is unexplained. No one has proof of shit. Again, those people I rattled off earlier, I'll have this conversation with them in a heartbeat. All those famous Bigfoot people, like whatever, dude. Like no one has proof of shit. Bigfoot is unexplained. Nothing but nothing but unexplained, which brings us back around to undiscovered hominin, which is actually the only thing that we as a species could actually wrap our heads around is that, and somehow, this undiscovered hominin it's outplayed us, it's kept its distance. You know, you're imagining the scenario that it would take for, the modern world to exist, which you could see from space at night, the human, modern day human taking over of the world, how does such a thing escape us? And that's a hard thing to wrap your head around. It's a head scratcher. But if that's the case, um, one of these things isn't like the other. Something doesn't add up. The Bigfoot echo chamber is completely in charge of the narrative. And I'm sick of the narrative. I'm sick of the fucking stories, to be honest with you. But for one reason, because they are getting more outlandish. That's a trend. Um, clearly, just clearly, made up. Um, stories ain't cutting it, man. It's not getting anything done. Researchers banging on fucking trees, not getting it done. So if there's an undiscovered hominin around us, we got to find a way to actually observe it. And it shouldn't be showing up like the narrative says it is. So somebody's full of shit, and it ain't science. And reality is never full of shit because the truth is absolute. The truth, by definition, cannot lie. So I think that's a good place to calm down and get off that stump speech. Uh, and maybe talk to you guys for a minute. Why not? Keep it interesting. Uh, so shift gears to questions, comments. uh, right. That's some high philosophy you got going there, man. That's some simulation talk there. Like everything's just a theory. I hear you. Um, yeah, and that's a good point, of course, Jeff. Um, you know, it's just that like like Bigfooters, Bigfoot researchers, they don't think that way, man. They're not. They're just they're they're thrill seekers. Like to me, man, they're just it's this it's this and Pete, please. It's this thrill, Pete. Come on, man. Come on, Pete. It's this thrill seeking attitude. It's like it's fun and exciting to think that you're getting close to a Bigfoot, right? Until it's not, I say, but whatever. Um, it's just again, Bigfoot on the brain. We're going out there. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it. And we got our gear. We got our gear. Our gear. you know, and it's just it's this weird thrill seeking thing. You know, I think I'm of the opinion that most people that actually have an encounter, um, at the time of their encounter, they were not Bigfooters. They weren't involved with anything Bigfoot. And like Jeff's a good example of that. He's just an 18-year-old kid out there trying to have fun and think anything of fucking Bigfoot. And there's a lot of people like that. To me, that's the most credible anecdote. What else we got here? Pat, what do you think is the squatchiest area of the U.S.? I have no idea. I mean, it's hard to tell. Um, it's really hard to tell. Chicago might as well be. I mean, what should be the most squatchiest area is the most vast remote areas where people don't fucking go, but there's still like sustainable, you know, uh, like wildlife and plants, whatever. Like there's still sustainable things there. That's what it should be. Man, I don't know. It depends. Like, so I don't know how many of those shows I go on. Um, with me, if I kind of have this thing, man, where, uh, so like I caught a ton of flack from people I knew, know, for going on dark waters. But in my world, like me and DW were cool. Amicably cool. We weren't at war, and we weren't best buddies getting ready to open an ice cream to stand together or anything. He asked me to be on a show to talk about drones. And so, oh, okay, I get an opportunity to expose myself to a new audience to talk about drones and hoaxers, actually, to some degree, like, or how people get stuff wrong. So I'll always take advantage of being able to expose myself to a completely different audience. Um, is more important than if that host has had questionable people on or known hoaxers or whatever. What was funny about sorry. Mm, what was funny about the DW thing, he had a series of other people, so this was kind of a series, and one of them ended up being Zasky. So, and I think that's why I really caught a lot. I didn't know that. I still would have done it. You know, I still would have done it again, just to expose myself and my ideas to an audience that never heard them before. Is I think more powerful than you know. Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. Like I'll go on anybody's show, pretty much. I'm sure we could think of an example or two. I wouldn't, but so let's keep going here. Sorry, God. Uh, um, Raptor, what's up? Hey, just give me 2 seconds. What can I play? We're gonna take. We're gonna do a quick intermission. What am I gonna play here? I think I'm gonna play open-mindedness. Yeah. Quick intermission, guys. Hang with me. Might have a guest on here when we come back. This is just a quick intermission. So enjoy the content.
Critical thinking is not incompatible with open-mindedness. On the contrary, it empowers an open mind. Even though demanding valid evidence may lead you occasionally to reject ideas that are poorly supported but nonetheless valid, if and when evidence accumulates for those ideas, an open mind will allow you to reconsider them and possibly dislodge false ideas you'd previously accepted as true. This approach is promoted by science. By contrast, when you have an open mind but demand little or no evidence before accepting things, you leave your understanding of reality much more up to chance. Even worse, if you've accepted false ideas uncritically and close your mind to anything that contradicts them, you won't recognize true ideas even when the evidence is overwhelming, and you'll sabotage your own capacity for learning. If you believe in pseudoscientific and supernatural concepts, that's your privilege. If you want to put forward your personal reasons for believing in them, understanding that whoever's listening may have questions or find flaws in your arguments, that's fine. But if you're in the habit of targeting individuals you've never met and suggesting they're in some way deficient just because they don't believe in these concepts, if you reject conflicting evidence and counter-arguments without consideration, but demand that others accept your arguments and what you regard as evidence uncritically, not only is that closed-minded, it's controlling, arrogant, and presumptuous in the extreme. More importantly, when you're trying to make it seem unreasonable for someone to want evidence before changing a significant attitude or take a significant risk, the mere fact that your claim requires a suspension of critical thinking should indicate it's not the other person that needs to demand less evidence, but you that needs to demand more. Before presuming to advise others to be open-minded, think about some of the widely accepted ideas you dismiss without consideration. You might need the advice you're dispensing far more than other people. Remember too that an open mind that demands little or no evidence for ideas before accepting them will let in an awful lot of rubbish.
An awful lot of rubbish. That's my favorite part with the little animation. We'll let in an awful lot of rubbish. It's true though. That little clip right there is a very, very powerful piece of advice that many people in the Bigfoot world should watch 30 times in a row until they understand it. What's up, Kraz? God damn these things. Ugh. All right. We're gonna bring Jeff in. Sorry, man. No cool intro for you.
That's all right. I wouldn't expect one. All right, good night.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. My voice is starting to go. Yeah, what's up, man? What do you think? You thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, I popped on YouTube and seen you were going live, and I thought, oh,
yeah, I
cool.
did 0.
Glad to see you back on the airwaves here.
I did 0 heads up. It wasn't even a scheduled show. I just did, I'm just gonna do it right now. No thumbnail, no nothing.
That's all right. Those sometimes usually end up being I don't know, for whatever reason. But how come when you do that, it's like some of the most well-attended stuff you do? It's like there's people watching. You got 30 people watching right now, and 45 minutes ago, nobody even knew you were going to be online. So,
but so what do you think, man?
I'm picking up what you're putting down. I mean, like you said, we talked a little bit last week about this, and there's definitely a problem with it seems like the default of the community, that if anybody in the community hits the reset button, what they're defaulting to isn't common sense. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. Got my screen going blurry here.
Well, I mean, it's the concept of magical thinking and having shit on your brain. Um, I heard like what was it like? Who was it that said that? Like that. So, God, Jeff, I'm sorry. So I was doing something like last week, and I was outside, and I was like heavily concentrating on my task,
Mm-hmm.
and I keep hearing all this wrestling in the leaves, not far away. But I was very focused on what I was doing, and the wrestling of the leaves kept happening. And then I finally realized, I'm like, God, man, that there's this deer. I mean, there's deer all around the lake here. I'm like, this deer is just hanging around over here right by me. I gotta look at this thing. It might be a cool like little fawn or something, or a beautiful doe, whatever. I looked over, it was a damn squirrel. I was fully expecting to see a deer when I turned my head. Now again, the leaves started fall. It's heavy leaf litter, right? But still, dude, I thought I was gonna see a deer and I saw a squirrel.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit. That's a huge difference in size of animal, man. That like my brain went way somewhere else.
But when it comes to audibly, your brain didn't really have an accurate reference of, a default place to start. You didn't hear that immediately and say, that's either too loud or not loud enough to be this or that. You know what I mean? There just wasn't a reference for that there. And so it'll naturally kind of subliminally start at a point and you don't really realize, is there a plausible reason why it started there? No, you didn't apply any reasoning for it to start where it started.
Mm-hmm.
Deer, it's a deer. I'm hearing a deer. Hey, I should check out this deer. Oh, it's a squirrel. There was nothing you were actively applying to those sounds saying, this is why I think this is a deer. It was just subliminally starting there. Like that's the default point to start, right?
Yeah,
And I
it was
think the
just
more
so
life
loud.
experience we have, we
Yeah.
start establishing a threshold of why does something start where it starts. But even so, I'll sit, like I said, I'll sit in a tree stand and hear a squirrel 100 yards away going through 6 inches of dry leaves, and I'll think, shit, there's an elk walking through this
And see, so
place,
that's
and then
almost
you look down and
that's
it's
the
a
opposite.
squirrel.
Yes. Yeah, you just flipped the script on like to a complete opposite situation of the same
It's
exact damn two animals almost.
but you know what
Yeah.
I'm not taking into consideration when I'm sitting in that tree stand and first hear that is it's completely still right now. The air temperature is cold and therefore that sound is traveling differently through it. And all these little things that would make you say there's a reason why that thing sounds louder than it really is. None of that's registering at that critical beginning moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's all your I'm of the opinion all of your senses will lie to you except your nose. I think the nose is incapable of lying, or at least the most incapable. Because if something's burning, something's burning. If somebody's cooking a steak, they're cooking a steak. You're not mistaking it for asparagus or whatever. You know what
Well,
I mean?
I don't think that that sense can go dormant on you momentarily. Meaning somebody will say, "Do you see that over there?" And when you look, you'll be like, "Wow, I didn't see that. It was in my peripheral, right? It didn't jump out at me." Or did you hear that? I didn't hear that because my ears were I had this song stuck in my head, or I was, whatever.
Yeah,
All these different things. But when it comes to scent, you could be doing 10 things at once, and all of a sudden it's like, what am I smelling right now? You know what I mean? You can't get distracted from that
yeah.
sense, so to speak.
Uh, Yeah, I don't think Brendan. He doesn't say that exactly. So I find myself more aligned with Brendan. I'm certainly not going in a woo direction. I think Brendan has been pretty clear about not being a woo guy, just sort of almost where I'm at, which is I don't know, I just can't explain it. I
I don't
I'm
think
not,
lack of critical data to support flesh and blood is evidence to move in the woo direction. That's a
I agree.
misperception, I think.
I Yeah, and I actually agree with that because I feel like there's a tool that could be used tomorrow to like start um actually collecting real data because these like I'm sorry, these investigations, these researchers, even though I know you tried to do your thing. The thing you did was different. You were trying to like
I was
actually
trying to take
collect
a
biological
I was
samples.
trying to take a different approach simply
Yeah,
because I hadn't heard anybody else do it that way
right.
before.
And so
What I'm
I
doing right
yeah.
now, though, is
And the
there's
mosquito
a
thing.
different
Yep.
reason why I'm led to try what I am now is because I've kind of looked at this and said every researcher that's out there that's trying to prove that it exists is failing to do so. What if, as
And they
somebody
are.
who's
Yeah.
had an experience and believes they exist, I actively try to go the route that most skeptics aren't and try to prove that it doesn't exist? Could I run into something in that process that makes me look at things differently? Even though I feel they do exist, I know what I saw feels like it was flesh and blood and not a woo explanation for what I experienced. But rather than trying to prove that something exists, which seems to be impossible since Patterson Gimlin, it doesn't
Right.
seem like
Yeah.
anybody's accomplishing this. What
Yeah.
if I actively try to come up with data that would show that it likely doesn't exist? In trying to do that, could I show that I'm wrong in doing that? So when I go out and do vector collection of DNA and try to get thousands of vector collected DNA samples showing, look at all these vertebrate mammals that are in these areas. I've got representations for all of them at some point and still don't have a Bigfoot. Could you prove that they exist? That doesn't prove that they don't exist, but it certainly gives somebody who subscribes to that theory some pretty hard evidence that's leaning in their direction, right?
Yeah.
But what if putting that together, I come up with 3 or 4 samples from 4 different geographical areas that are all identical and are all uncharted, unmapped DNA specimens of something that's real?
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, I've tripped up and said, that doesn't prove that they exist to me yet, but it sure shuts down somebody who says they can't exist. It just slapped them in the face with a wet glove.
Well, I'll tell you right now, Jeff. The first time I heard about and what was the terminology you used to just remind me?
Vec- Vector
vector,
collection. So, vector would be
mosquito,
a tick, a mosquito, anything that has a, you
blood
know,
sucking.
well, yeah, it has
Yeah,
a relationship that it benefits from the survival of, basically.
right. Um, so the first time I ever heard that was on a non-Bigfoot channel, which was on Modern Day Debate, and Jeff Meldrum. I can't remember if it was his first or second appearance there, and the two scientists suggested to him such a thing, that exact thing. We in I'll just paraphrase it like we know that uh, you could check for this through. There's this thing we do where we uh, take DNA from mosquitoes in areas where there are no people, and that would be one way that you could actually kind of like start scientifically sorting it out. And Jeff had no idea that was even a thing. He was like, "What?
Uh,
Really?" he was kind of surprised, and that was one thing that actual scientists who are not Bigfooters, and they were there to be on the other side of the Bigfoot debate, suggested doing. So to me, that makes your idea of doing it as somebody in the Bigfoot world validated by science.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that would be something that would be acceptable by science because it doesn't involve Indiana Jones with a fucking flashlight banging on a tree.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the way I look at it is there's a couple things that led me to looking at this type of research, and that's that you don't have to spend 8.5 miles kayaking up a river
Yeah.
in hopes that you might find a hair stuck to something.
Right.
You're putting out a mosquito trap in a very, very remote area in which you don't have human beings within 15 miles of, and you're going to collect probably 1,000 mosquitoes or at least hundreds of them in a mosquito trap that night. And roughly 20 to 40% of them will have fed on a blood host within the last 24 hours and have a DNA sample of that host inside of it.
Yeah.
So I can collect hundreds of them a night. And mosquitoes have been documented in science that they have used as a blood host, pretty much every known vertebrate mammal and most avian species, even like ducks and stuff, waterfowl. So, why not go that route and let nature do the collection, so to speak? We collect those mosquitoes, partner with several labs that have this process carved down to a science, and they've already been doing this for a dozen years in these DNA labs. They've been looking at mosquitoes because they've collected mosquitoes to study virus transfers amongst deer and other wildlife. This is a process they've been doing. They know how to do it.
Right.
They've never looked at Bigfoot subject and said, hey, we should try it on there, because they've never had a reason to, and they've never been funded to do that.
Right.
But when I looked at this and said to the scientific community, this is an opportunity, in my mind, to put a thumbs up or a thumbs down to this. If we collect 10,000 samples and we've got every vertebrate mammal in that area of North America times 100 for each one, and you still haven't collected a Sasquatch, you're getting a pretty uphill battle to argue that they could physically exist.
You're at least narrowing it down.
You're getting there.
You're narrowing it down to at least depending on how many traps you set, where, I want to start I say I want to start putting these traps in North Georgia, but they'll bite people. So
once the first thing I had to do was study all the parameters around, pardon the pun, but all the parameters around the capability of a mosquito. And then you find, well, there's 4 species of mosquitoes in these areas. How far can they fly in its lifespan? And what is its lifespan? 72 to 150 hours, depending on which of the 4 species it is. They don't live that long.
I didn't know that.
Their eggs are laid in a puddle or standing water that usually doesn't have much flow to it. They're hatched, and within 4 or 5 days, they're done. But during that time, they can fly up to 30 miles, depending on breeze and wind movement. They aren't going to fly against a 15-mile-an-hour wind. They're going to fly normal, but slowly be carried into different geographical areas. So now you got to start playing that game. If the wind's been blowing for the last 3 days out of the north, I want to get someplace where north of me there isn't a city, right? So
sure,
you start playing these games of where should you collect at? And then you got to go into those areas wearing a mosquito suit so that one can't bite you when you set your trap out and then get caught in the trap. But if you're doing it right, you should really narrow down any chance to collect any DNA from a human if you're putting them in the right areas.
So I think we can address grasshoppers. Very good question. Is that they're not looking for it. Jeff's trying to introduce this
So
into.
there's a couple of reasons why there isn't DNA from humans already cataloged in vector collection. And that's one, if it's a funded study like the one that I referenced 2 years ago that was done in Northern California, they were paid to study the virus transfer amongst big game animals and different vertebrate mammals in these slough areas of Northern California. And in doing so, if they got any DNA that was human, they just threw it away because that's not what they were paid to study. They were paid to study the virus, pass through of different mammals, not humans. So the other thing is if I collect DNA from a mosquito of a human, and I just look at and say, well, this is a male or a female, whatever. I could look at and say this is somebody that's Italian heritage. You could break it down pretty. Look at what Ancestry.com does, right? You could do all
Right.
of that. But if I start saying this is Pat Turner or this is Bob Smith and he's got AIDS, and I start putting that shit out, I'm going to get my ass sued. That's why most scientists don't store human DNA collected from vectors, because they never had permission from that individual to collect their DNA. So therefore, they'll analyze it, but not to an identifying source level of analyzing it, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. They don't want the liability of doing that. Me, I would have gotten a hold of that group when they were doing that study and said, all the human ones that you throw out, just give them to me. I don't need any other shit you're collecting. All the stuff that you don't want is the stuff I do want. If you had anything that tested human, part human, whatever, and you were throwing it out because you knew that wasn't a mule deer or a raccoon,
That's
that's all
just
the ones I
protocol.
would have loved to have looked at and
Right.
said, is this definitely a human? Or is there just some parameters of replication in the strain that shows there's some part human elements to it, but this isn't human DNA?
Right. I mean, that takes a deeper, a much deeper look, and DNA gets like just off the charts, like uh, convoluted, and like it's DNA is not a simple thing. Like,
Yeah.
um,
So Raptor, he loves to take any position he can whenever I'm talking about something because for him it's personal. I get that. I don't know why, but
let's not be
he
personal
says,
about
so we're supposed to find a tick or a mosquito that we think bit a Bigfoot. Wouldn't that be totally impossible? I just explained to
Yeah,
you
not with vector collecting. It
absolutely
could be
why it
possible.
would be simple, dude, if they
It
were
could be
out there.
possible.
If they were out there, it should be easily possible.
Yeah,
Because here's the
you're
thing.
basically
If I
utilizing.
analyze 2,000 mosquitoes, Pat,
That's a
I'm going to have
swarm.
returns for brown bear, black bear, caribou, moose, mule deer, white-tailed deer, raccoons, fishers, every vertebrate mammal out there I will see in those replications eventually over thousands of mosquitoes. If you do that to where I've got 124 black bear, I've got 31 brown bear, I've got 184 mule deer, I've got 200 and some elk, I've got 150 wolves, and I have 0 Bigfoot at that point, we've got a problem at that point. We've got a problem if they're there.
Yeah. And it's not a bad idea. So just imagine if you could walk up to a Bigfoot that was sleeping on the ground, but you Like, the only thing that you had time to do, the only thing that you could do is jab a needle in its arm and take a blood sample and then run away. And that was the only thing that you could do that you weren't gonna get killed.
Yeah.
That's what this like, using nature, a swarm of mosquitoes that do
Mhm.
that exact same thing
Yeah.
is actually brilliant without being known. None of it's known. There is no people involved until you study it.
Mhm.
So the mosquitoes act as little fucking minions to go out there and fucking do your bidding.
Yeah.
Like, it's brilliant, actually.
And
So that's
Greg
why.
Olson was
Yeah.
saying Bigfoot blood came back as human in the 70s as well. I would tell you right now, in the 70s, first of all,
I don't know what
DNA,
that's
if you
all
look
about.
at how the ability for a lab to analyze any type of a sample for DNA, what it does today versus what it did last year or 10 years ago is completely different. It is so
Yeah, I
liquid,
don't know.
fast
That's just
evolving.
I don't understand
And
that
it would
comment.
not come back as human. If you had a blood drop in a mosquito from a Sasquatch, there's no way you're going to mistake that for being a human blood sample. There's absolutely no way.
Yeah, it's again.
I
That
can tell the difference
it's all
between Pat's blood
very
drop and my blood drop today in a lab. I can tell you what part of Europe my ancestors originated from and where Pat's originated from. All of that just
true.
from the blood drop. So there's no way you're going to confuse a Bigfoot as being a human. It ain't going to happen.
Yes, there would become a point in the DNA sequencing where heads would start to turn and what the fucks would start flying across the room. Like, at what point in the sequencing, I couldn't tell you. I just know that point exists somewhere if you want to sequence it deep enough. So,
And what Raptor just said makes no sense
but
at all. I'm
the DNA
sorry.
is boring. I mean, the mosquito thing's cool, but
Yeah,
um,
Raptor says, I think you would actually have to have video evidence that Bigfoot is in a certain area. Then you might be able to get evidence through a mosquito or a tick, but without video evidence, won't happen. That is the most stupidest thing I've ever heard someone say. I'm sorry.
oh come on,
It
that,
is. It's
this is a
absolutely stupid, Pat. Come on. I need video evidence that Bigfoot exists. If I had that, why would I need any other evidence, dude?
yeah. I mean,
Are we
well,
losing
yeah.
our mind here in our
It would
own
still be good to
rationale?
collect DNA, but yeah, I hear you. I mean, yeah,
If you don't have video evidence that they exist, then all the other evidence doesn't count.
yeah.
I just, oh my God, this is a perfect example of that plausible starting point we use is so freaking out there, and all the other horse shit we've listened to and have ingrained ourselves as well, here's why something will and won't work. We're basing on all these things we've drawn conclusions of that weren't accurate to begin with.
Well, it sounds to me that you have gotten scientists to agree to work with you. Is
I
that a
have.
fair statement?
I have, and I can tell you, I've learned as much from those scientists as I have from anybody as far as how this community is perceived. And I'm not saying they look at all of us as if we're crazy. I don't think they do. But there's a lot to consider from their standpoint in how their involvement would be perceived. What is there a risk versus a reward when it comes to their reputation, whoever they're associated with? And in the end, whether you arrive at A, B, or C, is there a definitive finish line to say we are at A, B, or C, or is it still unknown? You know, they
Yeah.
don't want to get involved in something that in the end they didn't feel they could make a difference in determining something. You know what I mean? And
Well,
so, the idea that, geez, if we get 5,000 samples and we catalog all these different vertebrate mammals and we still don't have a Sasquatch, I'm not saying that's a thumbs down to that a flesh and blood Sasquatch exists, but that's pretty hard to overcome when if you're a believer, explain to me why there's not one in that sample.
right.
Why are they not there? You need to come up. The argument then isn't do they exist or not. The argument is tell me how they evade being captured in the sample. That's what I need to hear the plausible explanation to. Not that they exist or they don't exist. How did they evade that if you believe that they do exist?
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to offer some type of explanation. And like you said, do they just not exist in those remote areas? I don't know that that's the case. This idea that they're being attracted to areas that have a lot of people to them, that fights the common sense that from a flesh and blood creature whose number one priority to remain alive would be to be elusive and undiscovered. But you're telling me they're going to choose to put themselves into areas that have resources that are heavily populated versus choosing to put themselves that have survivable resources where they wouldn't be discovered.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a natural explanation to me.
Especially when they choose to put themselves like very presently, here I am, at BFRO paid investigation.
Yeah.
So again, that cuts right into the heart of the supreme contradiction. If they're elusive and rare, then they can't fucking be everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
It's that
And
simple.
you bring up a good example when you're talking about the AT in northern Georgia. And, on any given night, there's probably 200 humans in that stretch of the trail.
Right now as we speak.
Yeah. You might argue there's probably closer to 1,000, it being a long holiday weekend.
Oh, out there in the
more
mountains
people
tonight?
out there than normal.
There's probably a couple of thousand people out in the mountains camping. Every campsite's full.
So the idea when I hear people say, and again, we're coming down to reference. What do you reference in your mind when you're comparing something A to B? When people say, oh, we were in a really remote area, compared to what? What is your reference to a remote area? It was rural? Are you telling me that there's no humans camping within 20 miles of you or even 5 miles of you to where you're out of earshot from other humans? Can you guarantee me that? Most people can't. They just absolutely can't. When they're talking about areas along the East Coast, Pennsylvania, New York, I mean, I get that there's a lot of really remote areas there, but as the crow flies, are you ever 10 miles from a convenience store? Are you ever more than 5 miles from a road somewhere? Those to me are really rural areas, but they aren't technically remote areas.
Yeah, I mean, not relative to like some of the areas that I know you're familiar with.
Well, even the ones that I'm not, the remote. I was just reading Stephen's deal in the Coalition talking about the state of Washington. 220 million square miles 2.2 million square miles, I think it was, of forest.
Not 220. Yeah.
No, 2.2 million square miles of forest.
The entire planet Earth.
Dude, I'm just saying, there are areas in this country that if you break your leg and crawled for 30 miles, you would die. Even if you made it that far, you wouldn't find another human. You're not going to find the Walmart parking lot, dude. It's not out there. So, and yet those areas have streams full of salmon running and blueberry fields. And, it's just vast resources. You see all these other animals, black bear, brown bear, elk, they're all surviving. So you can't say, well, I don't think it could survive. So why couldn't it?
If the resources were there.
If the resources are there and other animals are doing it, then they could do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't imagine, Sasquatch just wandering around polar bear territory.
No.
Like,
8 feet of snow, 10
like,
months a
yeah,
year. I get it.
right,
Maybe
yeah,
he's going to migrate south a little bit, right?
yeah,
But
and he's got plenty of room to move.
yeah,
Actually, so, um, yeah, I get the remote thing, but even if, I could be aware of certain areas where the fire roads don't go and the AT
sure.
doesn't skirt through there, and I can look at these areas from an overlook, say 5 miles away or 2, 3 miles away even, and I can sort of imagine pockets of just like I'm like looking at these pockets going, "God, nobody ever goes there. There's
Which
no
is
reason for
exactly
them to,"
why
you
which
know?
is why I said what I'm not, people want to hear what you're not saying, not what you are. What I
Right,
said was is that I believe people could have an encounter with one of these in a lot of areas of the lower 48, including the state of Florida. Okay. I'm not saying they can't be there. I'm saying
right,
the rate that they're being reported as being credited to making the noises and the experiences that people experience out in these woods, they can't exist in those numbers in those areas. They simply can't.
right. Yeah, I think you have been misunderstood on that because that got brought up the other day on a different show I was on,
People are
and
like,
it
"Well,
wasn't.
you're saying they can't be
Yeah,
in Pennsylvania." I didn't say that. You're
uh,
saying Steve Coles is a liar that he never had that experience. I didn't say that. I'm saying that he very well could have. What I'm saying is that you can't go out with
I
5
was the
Bigfoot
Florida
believers
thing.
camping anywhere out there and 7 nights out of any given week tell me that you're summoning up these creatures and having these experiences. They don't exist at that number. It
Right.
can't be. It can't be. As
Yeah,
somebody who spent
I
over
agree.
650 nights in the most remote areas, spending
Yeah.
200 some thousand hours with 38 other guides glassing these areas from long distances, I haven't seen one, dude. And if that's the case, you can't tell me you're going to go out on Friday night and be back Monday with blurry pictures and shit thrown at you and whoops and whacking on your tent. Fuck you. I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that anymore.
I it all right, fair enough. Wow. And I get that. That's what I certainly covered all of that earlier. Like that again, narrative, the two contradicting narratives, rare and elusive versus Bigfoot narrative. And
Mhm.
here's the thing. Here's the problem is that some Bigfooters on the narrative side, they're gonna go, but I'm the exception. There
Absolutely.
there has to be an
I've seen
exception,
that,
right?
Pat. Listen, and
Yeah.
I'm not calling anybody out by name. Okay. I get where
It's my
there's a
show.
lot of people in my friends
Name
group
calling is allowed on
probably
my show.
felt like I was speaking to them on my show last week. That's not the case. I'm looking at
I'm
this
talking to
community as a
every
whole.
one of
I'm
them.
talking about hundreds of channel hosts from all throughout this community. And what you're seeing with these get togethers and we're going camping and we're going to go do this. And we'll tell you Monday what happened. And Monday, guess what? Nobody
Something
shows up
happened.
empty handed.
Yeah.
Nobody shows up empty handed, dude. It's Santa Claus with a bag of Sasquatch bullshit hanging over his back come Monday morning. Okay. And it always happens, right? It always happens.
Well,
So, you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. So when I say that, so I look at the whole, narrative versus rare and elusive versus Bigfoot narrative. Um, I I look at that and I go, you know what? There should be an anomaly. I could see, anomalies happen. That's why anomalies happen in everything, honestly. Statistical things always have anomalies. My problem is that every person in the room is going to stand up and put their hand up and go, I'm the anomaly. How do I tell? How can
Listen,
I
my
tell?
inbox was full of people from throughout the community saying, "Caught your show Friday night, loved it, amen, brother. It needed to be said." And there's a few of these people I'm looking at going, dude, you're one of the fucking top 10 offenders I was talking about.
Right.
And they're telling you it needed to be said, amen. Like they're oblivious to that they have any guilt in that.
Yeah.
And
that's
it
why
just was like, wow.
that's why I laid it out the way I did in the first part of my show so heavily was to push every single one of them in a corner that they can't back out of because they can't escape the contradiction.
Yeah.
You know, rare and elusive creature that you're able to dial up at will. It is kind of the narrative that is it's around and you're being a part of that narrative, yet no evidence. You can't
Yes.
escape that trifecta. You just can't.
And I'm
You're
not
pushed in the corner.
saying that anybody, any one of these people can't go out and have an experience. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that if we're going to take any given weekend and there's going to be 20-some thousand medical professionals out camping in remote areas, there's going to be 30-some thousand auto mechanics out camping in remote areas, and they're not coming back with any stories of anything crazy that happened to them that weekend. And yet we've got a 1,000 Bigfoot enthusiasts out camping, and 50% or more are coming back with stories. My point is, at the rate it's occurring at, there's no way we could have gone 60 years from PG till now at that rate of occurrence every freaking weekend without recreating PG film 100 times over eventually. If they're being interacted with human beings as much as our community is trying to tell people that they are,
the narrative,
there's no freaking way we've gotten nowhere in 6 decades.
Should be tons of evidence.
Should be tons of it by now.
Literally.
So something's wrong here. Something's wrong here.
One of these things, Jeff, is not like the other.
Yeah.
Dog chasing its tail. Dog chasing its tail.
That's not me saying that, somebody who says, hey, next month I'm getting together with so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. We're going to be out wherever. Anybody wants to come join us. And you go out there, and while you're out there, you're like, hey, we heard some tree knocks. We heard some whoops. I'm not going to say you didn't. And I can't prove that it wasn't Bigfoot. But if you're going to come back and present this as if we had this happen, and you're presenting it as if you're standing in front of a jury arguing that this was Bigfoot and there's not another explanation, we got a problem, because you're not doing this community any favors at that point. You've got to have a plausible application of the scientific method and say, is there something else that could have made that whoop?
I think
yes, there is.
I think the community is entertainment based, though.
You're right. I mean, Jay said it's entertainment. If you look at how many people are here for real answers and a solution to this mystery versus how many people are here to be entertained, I believe it's at least 9-1. Okay. You got 90% of people here looking to be entertained. And I'll be honest with you, as somebody who's here looking for answers, I'm not going to say I'm not entertained when I tune into some of these. I might be there for the laugh rather than to learn anything,
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that those who are going out with the intention of orchestrating the 3-ring circus mentality for the entertainment purpose with hiding behind the veil that they're trying to appear that they're trying to find a solution or real answers, to me, that's you start getting a fine line between where was Rick Dyer at and where are these people at? Because they aren't out there trying. At some point, they've got to be able to say they're there for the money, they're there for the clicks, they're there for the subs. They're not there for the answers.
or attention, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
which kind of ties into all that. And I mean, yeah, dude, it's not. I mean, it's hard to narrow it down to one thing. For people are individuals; they have their different reasons for whatever. You know, it's like I said earlier. There's 1,000 subcategories. So you got your main categories, which are outright hoaxers, like people like Dyer and whatever on Ontario, blah blah blah, and fuck Colorado Bigfoot, blah blah blah. Outright hoaxers. Then you have liars, and then you have like people in between that might just be lying to themselves, and you misidentifiers, people that just are misidentifying. And under those 4 categories, there's 1,000 subcategories. And I mean, I've kind of experienced all of it. And then I guess the 5th thing is that, you know what? This actually happened. The way this person said it, I find it very compelling. I don't know what the hell it is though. So you do, like, to me, like it's all about the percentage just shrunk over the past few months. The percentage of bullshit to this could actually be real shrunk to a tiny, tiny percentage of
But
real.
the thing is what you brought up there was that you got these people that are really out there with premeditated deception, right? That's their motive for being here. You've got people who are out there who are misapplying, misapplying the method. They are misidentifying what they're seeing. They're out of ignorance, maybe not analyzing data correctly, and therefore passing on a false narrative. You've got other people who are just simply embellishing because they want attention, they want to be accepted, they want to feel like they're part of something. So they're just right out of the gate doing it, not realizing they're really hurting anybody, right? They're not trying to hurt anybody. But it doesn't matter what degree of infraction you rest at in that diagram. None of them, whether it's the littlest infraction or the hugest one, is doing this community service. They're all hurting it to some degree. They are.
Yeah.
They're not helping anybody get further to an answer.
It's all
Nothing.
false. It's all false narrative that unfortunately way too many hosts gobble up, and their audience there also goes along with it and gobbles it up too. And then it becomes some kind of strange knowledge that is, like, again, false. It's not knowledge. There's no knowledge being gained, because this person says that or that, and that person agrees with it.
Why don't you read Raptor's last deal here?
But really, man, I just want to move away from that. I'm kind
of
ignoring it.
It's pretty hard to when he's trying to say this stuff. First of all, Raptor has been known over and over to say that he believes Bigfoot can only exist in the Pacific Northwest, can't be anywhere on the East Coast or Central United States. Guarantees you that it doesn't exist in those areas. That's what he said. Okay. Now, I don't know what kind of scientific data or whatever he's done to arrive at that conclusion, but at that point, you've thrown yourself into the absolute bullshit category. Okay. But
that's fine. If you want to address that, that's fine. I was just,
well, I never, at what point did I say there's no information of Bigfoots in these areas? I'm going to areas that I believe there are reports. I guess, to be honest with you, show me an area in North America, in the lower 48 or Canada, where there aren't any reports of Bigfoot. Where are there no reports? There's reports of him being on Long Island, for God's sakes. I mean, where has he not been reported to be? So I don't know.
That's cool, man. I'm going to wrap it up.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
No. It's okay.
There's a pretty obvious situation where not happy with Raptor with the bullshit. He said, I've invited him on my channel and given him the link to show up, state his case. He won't. He won't.
It's okay, dude. I've just kind of hit that time where I just kind of need to wrap it
No,
up.
I hear you. I hear you.
That
was a good show, and I think it's a good discussion. I also think it's a discussion that you're going to start seeing being held in other areas of this community on channels who are looking for answers. Because I think when I brought it up and you're bringing it up and these conversations are happening on different Facebook groups, that it's pretty hard to ignore that there is a conversation that needs to be had here based on this.
Yeah.
This idea that 5 dentists, 5 whatevers can go out and they experience nothing. You put 5 Bigfoot enthusiasts out and it's freaking Squatchapalooza with 5 stages going on. That does not have a natural explanation as to why that is. There is not one. And it's a concern. It's a red flag.
Lots of red flags. So I totally agree. And that's why, I called out some pretty big names earlier, but I'll have this discussion fairly, openly, and honestly with anyone that disagrees, anybody that thinks that they have some angle that I've missed. If they think they can skirt around the contradiction, I'd like to hear that logic behind it, and we'll see if that happens or not, man. People tend to just kind of like want to hold on to their cherished beliefs and not be willing to even fight for them. But I'm putting it out there, like everything I've said tonight is where I'm at and is honest, open opinion based on what I think I can back up as fact. So anyway, that's kind of what I have to say about it. And I'm just gonna wrap it up, Jeff, and end the show. Which one? I know I want. I want to know the one I want. Which one is it? Anything else you have to add as I look?
I don't.
Jesus Christ, where is it? I don't know which one it is. Man,
what are you looking for? The end show button or
yeah. Well, I have so many. I've got different ones.
Yeah.
And I'm so out of practice, dude. Like I haven't been doing live shows. I've not been perusing around my my brand, I think it's this. Or is it 130 show tag? Man, wow. Okay. Yeah, I'll just go with this. So anyway, bud, hopefully I'll hit the right button. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining in the conversation, man. Good to talk to you again, and I'm sure we'll talk soon. Jeff, we're still live. Yeah. I was just saying, I'm sure we'll talk soon, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We'll we can finish this discussion too and take it to a whole nother level. I'd love to get other people involved.
I'm sure, and
I think there's a lot of people who would bring in, and I'm not just saying people who think the way we do about it. I'd love to logically hear people explain why they believe maybe there is a reason that influencers and community believers are having experiences that other people don't. Tell me why.
You have to give an explanation.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, they're special. They're the anomaly. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up. And I mean, like, wrap it up. So I'll talk to you soon, Jeff.
You bet. We'll see you, bud.
All right, see you. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Interesting discussion tonight. and we'll see what comes in the future. I plan to try and keep going with this theme because that's kind of where I'm at now. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Let's assume that you've got to this point in the video and you don't agree with me at all. Fine, but I guarantee that this video has been beneficial to you. It will, at the very least, have allowed you to compare your own argument to mine, thus giving you an understanding of the opposite view of the argument, and, assuming you're being honest with yourself and actually paid attention, it will have strengthened your own line of reasoning in preparation for an intellectually honest counter-argument. Therefore, even if you don't agree with me at all, this video will still have been useful to you, even if it only confirmed what you previously knew. If I get defeated here, if someone comes along with a very good counter-argument that defeats mine properly, then great, we've all learned. And if I'm right, great, we've all learned again. But if we don't have the debate, because it's artificially shut down, or people complain so much that it persuades people not to take me seriously, we can't learn. We can't find the truth. So we will live in ignorance of the truth. It is therefore in all our best interests to have a debate about this subject. But if the academics or corporations like YouTube or the central state are not allowing the debate, or somehow find a way to call this offensive and take it down, then we won't learn and we will have a